Good morning. Look at the state of me. I did not sleep well last night. I'm preoccupied because it's getting closer and closer to August, which is traditionally when I would get the renewal notice for my tenancy. Now, my tenancy isn't due until the third week of October, but they always send them really early, which is good. Gives you plenty of warning. But I'm really worried about how much my rent's going to go up. I've been reading again in the news this past week that mortgages have rocketed again, and that's obviously going to have a knock-on effect because some of the renting figures are dreadful. And I've been reading about the rising number of not just individuals but whole families who are having to give up their accommodation, and families living in caravans and houses, and no one seems to care about it. It's just, we're turning into a mini America where, there's a culture of putting people out on the street and them having to move into tents and dodgy caravans. I was reading that Bristol is one of the worst places. Anyway, I am a practical person, so in anticipation of this, and the reason I couldn't sleep last night is I've been mentally putting together a plan for what happens if I have to say I can't renew here. And I've mentioned before how if I didn't rent here, I'd end up having to live in my car, and that situation hasn't changed. Yes, I can go and live with my parents at a push, and that's probably what will happen, because I already know that living in my car is not really a thing, because I have a very small 3-door hatchback. But I've strategically planned out what I will do. Before I lived here, this wasn't a problem because I had my studio in town, so all my work stuff stayed in the same place, and I could also easily, because the amount of space I had, I could use it as a holding spot for other things I didn't have room for. So when I first moved up here, for the first, 3 or 4 years, I was moving every year. I was moving house shares because I moved into a house share, and then I'd find out I was living with weirdos or nutters or something. So I was constantly moving about at least once a year. But it didn't really matter because going into a house share, you don't take much with you. So I'd pack a couple of bags and go again, and it wasn't that big a deal because everything was based at my studio. I don't have that now, and that was my fear when I moved here, but then also had to move my studio here, is that I can no longer move on my own. And even if you take out of the equation personal furniture and things, I still have things in my studio that I can't move on my own. I have a 12.5 stone cast iron sewing machine, and all of this is not helped because I don't live on the ground floor. So there are logistical issues which now mean I'm reliant on other people, which I really hate, because previously I wasn't. I didn't own anything big enough until I got that sewing machine to have to worry about that sort of thing. Everything else I could deal with. So my mental plan for if things go wrong here is basically to get a storage unit, partially mothball my business. There are lots of aspects of my business I can continue to do. I just won't be able to make clothing because I won't be able to set up the machine. But all the small things that I do, like the jewellery making and the braided coasters, all those little bits, I can continue to do. So I'll have to put my business into storage, keep bits of the furniture, etc., that I can move myself. Like I have lots of freestanding shelving and things which will be really useful. I have my 2 little countertop freezers which I can move myself, and they're really worth keeping. The big stuff can go. The bed, the chest of drawers and the sofa suite can all go back, or hopefully go back to the charity shop where I got them from. And they do a pig collection service, so that deals with that problem. And the only thing I've got to worry about then is how I get a 12.5 stone sewing machine down a flight of stairs. Now, when I was previously looking at storage units in my town, the one that I was interested in had a removal service, so if you were moving in, they had men with a van and they would come and move stuff. So if they still have that option, and I can still afford one of their units, because I was looking at that in 2018, so I imagine a lot has changed since then I can use that service. But if that doesn't exist, I'll have to hire a man with a van, which is what I had to do when I moved my sewing machine into where I live now from the studio, when I vacated the studio, because I couldn't fit in the back of a 3-door hatchback. So that would be the plan, to move everything into storage, use that as like a business storage base that I could keep coming back to as and when I need to, and then live between my parents and my car. And in some ways it's kind of exciting, because I actually don't like this. This flat feels like a millstone around my neck. This whole idea that I've accumulated all this stuff in the 6 years I've been here, and it's now stuff that makes it more complicated to move. And that's one of the reasons why I get all my stuff upcycle, recycle, free, skip dive, is because when it has to go, it doesn't matter. I didn't spend anything on it. So that's the plan, and I've mentally made that plan, but of course I don't know what's happening yet. Last year my rent went up £50 a month, and if it goes up £50 a month this year, that's doable for a year. And then I'll have to think seriously about what I'm going to do after that. But if they decide to throw it up £100, £200, £300 a month, I don't know. I don't know what the mortgage situation is on this place. I know it's buy-to-let. I know that my landlord is a serial buy-to-let landlord. He owns the entire block that I'm in, so we're all going up at the same rate. I just have to wait and see. There's no point in worrying about it, because what's going to happen is going to happen, and there's nothing I can do about it. But it's nice to know where you stand, so that's why I've mentally got a plan in place, but I can't act on it yet. And at least at the point where I do find out whether I can stay or go, I then have quite a lot of time before my contract ends mid-ish October to get myself sorted out and work out what I'm going to do and prepare for it, and do it gradually without having to, just throw everything in the back of the car in 3 days. I've got plenty of notice. But it's just another worry hanging over my head. I don't like it. It never used to be a problem. My rent always stayed the same, and then last year it went up. And I thought, okay, well, I've been here 5 years and never had a rent increase. I'm pretty lucky. But now this year just seems unprecedented, and it's not nice. So that's been playing on my mind a bit. It's not all been bad. July's been quite quiet, but this past week or so has been quite buoyant actually. I've had a bunch of sales. I had a commission to make a set of my braided coasters, so that means for 4 days I had something work related to really focus on, which was great. I really enjoyed that. That's how I want to be working You know, if I could take a few commissions a month, that would really give me focus, because at the moment I make to my own schedule. You know, I'm working to the beat of my own drum, and when someone comes along and says, I really like that, but can I have this number and in these colours, that gives me something to work on. And I really like having that dictation telling me how to work instead of me just shoving stuff together as I normally do, which really simplifies the creative process, but you know what I mean. So in that respect, this week hasn't been too bad. My favourite digital savings bank, Tandem, has again put its interest rates up. I think that's the third time they've put it up in the last month. It's now 4.36 for an easy access account, which is great because I'm shoving literally every spare penny that's in all my other bank accounts that aren't fixed bond savings accounts. Literally every spare penny gets shoved into my Tandem account as it comes in, to just grab every penny of interest that I can get, because interest is one of my passive incomes, and right now I really need it because income is slow, business is slow, everything's very uncertain, and I hate that. I don't like knowing where I stand with things, and it's just been a really weird one. It's weird because I coasted through 2020 so easily by just thinking, right, how do I change the way I work? How do I stay in business? And I did really well. And of course, 2021 was a slump because everyone stopped buying stuff online and went back to work and went out and all that sort of thing. 2022 was a continuing slide, and of course we then entered economic problems, and we had all those problems with trusts, and the cost of living crisis moved in. We still have, say, a threat of recession. Some people say we're in it, some people say we're not, some people will say we're not going to have one and this is it. But this could drag on easily for a couple of years, as it is, and despite them putting, you know, interest up, inflation is still going up, mortgage rates are going up, retailers are still price gouging and making massive profits on the back of people's instability. Supermarkets are being investigated for profiteering, which we know is happening, otherwise the prices wouldn't be going up like they are. Energy companies. So there's so much going on, and I'm usually pretty good at tuning a lot of it out. And I think with all the things that have been going on in the news this last week with a certain BBC presenter, which I won't talk about because that's not what my channel is, and I think it's just news story creep. It's trickling too much into my life, and I need to shut it off because it's really, really dragging me down. Anyway, it's the end of another week. I have a few other things to talk about. It's not revelationary, that's the word, but it's things to talk about. So, let's get on with the day. Today, I went shopping in Sainsbury's. I bought this cheese, this pesto, and this coffee. Now this and this are on Nectar prices. So my total shop came to £7.74. But I bought it on Nectar points that I've been saving, which means that this shop only cost me 24p. But I also got 190 Nectar points back on my card for the coffee and a promotional deal they're doing at the moment, and that comes to 95p. But this and this were both discounted with the Shopmium cashback app. So I got £1 off of this I got £1.25 off of that, which means that this shop has profited by £2.96. Today I went out and did my long walk to Tesco's because there were a couple of deals, and let's just straighten this out. So yeah, there were a couple of deals and I decided to walk because I don't know what I was saying anymore. Lost my train of thought completely. I decided to walk because I didn't have anything else planned. It's Saturday and it said it was going to rain and it didn't, so I thought I'd walk out. And on the way back I found something at the side of the road which I've brought home with me, which is this. It's a supermarket shopping basket. I really like it because it's got this concave bit on the side, which means you can hold it against you and it sits really nicely in your waistline. I don't know what I'm going to do with it. It'll probably be storage, and then I reminded myself, you know, in a few months you might be moving out. What the hell are you going to do with it? Anyway, so that's my found for today. My brain just isn't working at all at the moment. I am absolutely obsessed by looking at YouTube videos of van lifers and people living in their cars and just trying to get my head around the potential scenario that might happen in towards the end of October. I don't want to jinx it by not thinking about it at all and then having this mad panic if a plan is drummed into me a lot by the time I find out what's going on with my tenancy renewal. Then it'll be a case of going, oh well, at least I now know what I'm doing. Part of me loves the idea of giving up this place. As I've mentioned earlier, I hate the millstone of property around my neck. Not even my property, it's someone else's property, but the constant worry about how long I'm still going to be in it, the worry about all the stuff that I have to deal with if I have to move, all the things that I've accumulated that I'd like to keep, that I can't, like dozens of houseplants, growing my own veg, all things that I can't do if I'm not here. But that's life. Lifestyle creep is a thing. So when I moved in here 6 years ago, I started to lay down the foundations of living a life in a property that was all mine. You know, I wasn't in a house share and just living in one room and that was pretty much all I had. It was the whole thing. And you fill it. You do. You fill it. I mean, I only filled it with the stuff I needed, like a bed, a sofa suite and a chest of drawers so I could put clothes somewhere. The rest of it was mostly still stuff that I'd had in storage for ages, because when I first moved to the northwest I'd come from somewhere else, and then because I'd gone between so many house shares, all the things that I decided to hang on to, like all my kitchenware, I kept all my plates and my bowls and my cutlery, and all these things went into boxes. And I thought, well, I might as well hang on to those. They're small and easy to move, and one day I'm probably going to need them. So when I moved in here, apart from buying the big bits of second-hand furniture, I had everything to get going. You know, I had a kettle in a box and a toaster and things like that because I thought they would be useful. So I would do that again. These are all the things that I would keep, but the big stuff can jolly well go, and some of the knickknacks which are unfortunately, sentimental knickknacks, and I'm not very good at breaking emotionally from things, which is why I don't like being gifted things, because I find them very hard to then get rid of when they just get in the way. So I have all sorts of sentimental knickknacks in various boxes, mostly at my parents', because it's just really hard to get rid of stuff. It's really difficult. So that's it really. I just wanted to show you my shopping basket that I have no idea what to do with. If I had like a proper garden space, I think what I'd probably do is fill it with earth and poke strawberry plants into the gaps in it. So you've got these fun little gaps. I can't work out what that logo is. That's not Aldi, is it? I don't know what that is. Maybe it is an Aldi. Yeah, so I would probably fill it with earth and poke the strawberry plants in so you could get hanging, a much better way of growing strawberries. And if I am still here after October, I will probably do that next year, because I still have strawberry plant growing outside. My brain is completely addled today. That long walk kind of knocked me out, and my complete preoccupation with with potential van life or car life, van life in a car, is I just can't focus on anything else really. That's all that is. Anyway, so I mean, look at all my plants. Look at these things, sentimental things, and just things, and so much stuff will have to go. And I'm talking like I'm already going, and I don't know I am yet. But I reckon in a couple of weeks I will know. I'm making lunch, bear with me. I woke up at 5 o'clock this morning thinking about job vacancies, thinking about jobs basically, and it kept me awake for about an hour and a half, so I think I probably went off back to sleep about 6:30, and then eventually I woke up, looked at the clock, and it was 10:30. This money situation is starting to wear on me a little bit. It's my own fault. I said that 2023 was going to be the year I did things. Sorted myself out. I've done a few things, but the one priority I should have thought about was increasing my income, not just by trying to sell more stuff or setting up websites and YouTube, but actually getting up off my butt and going and getting a real job. I did update my CV earlier in the year. I've got it with recruitment agencies and I've signed up to job alerts. There's not a lot around here. I've talked before about how the way my life now works, and because I live so far from family, means that full-time jobs are going to be tricky, because it means I'm never going to see family. I'm not going to be able to keep dental appointments. And you might say, well, for God's sakes, just, grow a backbone and just deal with it. And yes, I probably will. But I'm trying to make the best of a bad situation, because the last thing I want to do is go back to office work. because I don't enjoy it. But I have been looking at the various kinds of jobs that are out there. I've seen full-time jobs that aren't even paying minimum wage. I didn't know you were allowed to do that. I've seen jobs for like £7-8 an hour, which is crazy. The other problem is, of course, that I haven't worked in an office for 10 years now. Who wants to employ someone who hasn't been in the job market for 10 years? Who wants to employ someone who is almost 50? We have a lot of ageism in the workplace, and it's a tough market out there. I've heard there are lots of jobs and that people don't want the jobs. I wouldn't say I'm seeing lots of jobs. It looks kind of average to me. But I'm not qualified for any of them. Like I say, I've been out of... I mean, the last time I did an actual office job was 2015, when I first moved up this way and I did some temping work. So I haven't used any of the online systems that a lot of them use. So a lot of them use SAP for money related things. I mean, I can pick up new skills, but they don't want to be doing that. They want people they can sit in a chair and say, right, get on with it. So that's a challenge. I'm not skilled. I am older. And I'm not sure that I'm going to find anything. Looking at part-time and temporary jobs, people's idea of part-time hours is weird. I'm seeing jobs listed as part-time which look like they are full-time hours, like 37 hours a week. So maybe part-time jobs are that now. Maybe they expect you to just work yourself stupid. I don't know. It's very weird. So I've been looking at that. I have added myself to lots of job alerts, joined agencies, all sorts of things. Because of course the getting of the work, the other income, would solve the whole problem of the rent, because it would mean I wouldn't have to move. And I was laying there in those early hours this morning thinking, what am I thinking? Why on earth would I want to put myself out on the street like that? But it does depend on how much that rent's going to go up by. This really depressing update. Stop moaning. I thought I'd give a quick gardening update. So I've put the last of my last two broad bean plants out, and it looks like they're going to be decimated by whatever is eating everything. This is not a problem I had last year. Broad beans did really well, but the weather was hotter, and I think that it's now really wet, and I think that the slugs are just eating everything. So broad beans just ain't happening this year. My my potatoes out in pots have done really well. The leaves are starting to turn, so I think they're going to be ready. But I've already got a second batch ready to plant, so I'll show you those. These are the potatoes that I rescued from my parents, and as you can see, these guys are ready to put out now, I think. So as soon as I've made some space and I've pulled up some of the potatoes outside, which I'm going to do later, and hopefully we'll get potatoes, these can then start to go out. This is how the fennel seeds that I planted a couple of weeks ago are doing. I've never grown fennel before, but I'm presuming these are doing what they're supposed to do. So 5 of the 6 seeds have germinated, and they're looking quite good. I've got to read up what to do with them next, but I think I might leave them here for a while, and it may be that I can put them each into their own individual pots and keep them indoors anyway. The other thing that's done well is the basil cuttings that I took from the plants that died while I was away and I had all my troughs in the bath. They've done really well. So I have a ton of basil because I also still have this plant which I rescued from the supermarket the other week, so that's done really well too. My 2 bell peppers are still alive as well. Look at this. It's getting there. I don't know why this one is so much smaller. They germinated almost at the same time. The seeds were from the supermarket and there were 3 colours, so it was the mixed bag. So maybe it's just a different version, I'm not sure. But I've realised that I now have a problem in that if these flower, what's going to pollinate them? Unless they both flower at the same time and pollinate each other, I'm going to be in a bit of a bind because I don't know whether there are any more bell peppers anywhere. So we'll have to see. Even if they don't turn into anything at any point, at least I know how to do it now, and I know that it does work. So that means that next year I will just plant a lot more seeds and we'll see what we can get out of that. I dug up the first of my potato plants today. They're quite small. I don't know whether it's to do with the weather or it's just, I mean, it's always hit and miss when you plant things from the supermarket like sprouting potatoes because you're never quite sure what you're going to get, and I am no expert. We started out with very hot weather this year and then it's become very damp and a lot cooler, so I don't know whether that's had anything to do with it. I mean, these are small but perfectly edible. You know, they're perfectly decent looking, none of them are green. So if I get that off of the other, I think it's 5 plants I've got outside, there's only me to feed, so that's an entire meal in one go. So anyway, it's a growing exercise always.